The crystalline spires of New Meridian Station cast prismatic shadows through the swirling atmosphere of HD 478 bits, a gas giant that the Nebula Kingdom called home. Inside the diplomatic quarter, emergency klaxons shattered the usual serenity of the morning cycle. Red warning lights pulsed through the translucent corridors, reflecting off the environmental suits of panicked staff members as they converged on Chamber 7. Ambassador Catherine Morrison's body drifted lazily in the zero-gravity chamber, her environmental suit's faceplate spiderwebbed with cracks. The emergency containment field crackled around her, holding what remained of her suit's atmosphere inside. Her blonde hair, now freed from its usual tight bun, floated around her head like a halo, occasionally obscuring the look of determination forever frozen on her face. "This is impossible," Senior Diplomatic Minister Vex Shan declared, his gaseous form rippling with agitation inside his crystalline containment vessel. "Our maintenance protocols are perfect. The Nebula Kingdom has never lost a protected guest in 3 centuries of diplomatic relations." Security Chief Lyra Quinn wasn't listening. Her focus remained locked on Morrison's suit's diagnostic panel, still actively streaming data. "Minister, we have a problem," she said, her voice tight. The ambassador was transmitting right up until the end. The last transmission from Ambassador Morrison played through the chamber's communication system. "Maintenance schedule shows no authorized work today. These technicians aren't in the system. I'm initiating emergency proto." The message ended in a sharp hiss of escaping air. Vex Shan's form condensed, the Nebulan equivalent of growing pale. "Unauthorized maintenance. Impossible. Our systems err." "Perfect. Yes, you mentioned that," Quinn interrupted, her dark eyes narrowing as she accessed more data from the suit. "Just like the perfect security footage that's mysteriously corrupted for the past hour. Or the perfect airlock log showing no entries despite an obviously forced maintenance override." The chamber filled with more Nebulan officials, their crystalline vessels crowding the space as they demanded explanations. Quinn ignored them, her attention caught by something in Morrison's clenched fist. Using her suit's manipulator field, she carefully extracted a data chip. "Minister," she said, her voice carrying over the growing chaos, "Ambassador Morrison left us a message." The chip's contents displayed on the chamber's holoscreen. Technical specifications for a new class of Nebulan weapon, along with documentation linking its development to the Supremacy Front, a powerful political faction that had openly opposed human-Nebulan cooperation. Morrison had discovered their illegal weapons program and was preparing to present evidence to the High Council. "This is a fabrication," Vex Shan insisted, his gaseous form now roiling with discrete bands of color, a sign of extreme distress. "The Supremacy Front is a respected political movement. They would never." "Minister," Quinn cut in, her voice glacial, "in the next few minutes, I have to contact Earth and explain how their ambassador died in our perfect facility. I suggest you spend less time defending the Supremacy Front and more time preparing for what happens next." As if to punctuate her warning, the facility's long-range communications array detected an incoming transmission from Earth. The message was unlike anything in diplomatic protocol. A single line of text, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Ambassador Morrison status UPDAT required. Respond IDMBD8 Heloi." Vex Shan's form became almost transparent with fear. In 3 centuries of diplomatic relations, he had never seen humans deviate from proper communication protocols. This raw, demanding transmission felt like the first tremor before an earthquake. "Respond with the truth," Quinn advised, already moving toward the exit. "They'll know if you lie. And Minister, when you explain this to Earth, remember that humans don't share the Nebulan capacity for emotionless logic. They're going to want more than a perfect investigation. They're going to want justice." As Quinn left the chamber, she sent her own private message to Earth Command. "Contingency Morrison activated. The storm is coming." The Nebulan High Council chamber fell silent as the latest report appeared on their quantum displays. Another border outpost, Station Nexus 7 had gone dark. No distress signal, no debris field, no explanation. Just another point of light winking out in the vast darkness of space. That makes 17 stations in 7 cycles. Counselor Zexval announced, his gaseous form churning with bands of deep purple anxiety. And still no response from Earth or any human colony. Supreme Commander Ixal's crystalline vessel hummed with barely contained energy as she addressed the council. The humans are merely hiding, nursing their primitive emotional wounds. Their silence is. A junior communication officer burst into the chamber, protocol forgotten in his haste. Counselors, the Harmony Trading Station. It's just gone. Gone. Ixal's form condensed to a tight, angry spiral. Harmony Station had a crew of 3,000 Nebulans. A station that size doesn't just disappear. But it had. The quantum feeds showed nothing but empty space where the massive trading hub had stood for centuries. More disturbing were the final sensor readings. No energy signatures, no weapon discharges, no signs of conventional attack. The station had simply ceased to exist. In her private chambers, Security Chief Quinn watched the confusion unfold with grim satisfaction. Her quantum terminal displayed a message that the Nebulans couldn't detect, broadcast on a frequency Morrison had developed. Operation Silent Night proceeding as planned. Ghost Fleet assets in position, awaiting final authorization. The humans hadn't been idle during their week of silence. While the Nebulans dismissed their withdrawal as emotional weakness, Earth's combined fleet had been methodically positioning itself throughout Nebulan space, using technology that Morrison had helped develop. Ships with hulls that could bend light and absorb energy signatures, making them virtually invisible in the gas giant environments the Nebulans called home. Quinn's terminal chimed. A new message scrolled across her screen. The Morrison Protocol is in effect. Get out now. She had 10 minutes. In the council chamber, the debates reached a fever pitch. We should launch a preemptive strike, Ixal demanded. The human silence proves their hostile intent. Against what target? Zexval countered. We haven't detected a single human ship since they withdrew. Our long-range sensors show their colonies are completely abandoned. A new alert flashed across the quantum displays. Multiple Nebulan military vessels had lost contact along the rimward border. Not destroyed, simply gone, as if swallowed by the void. Quinn stepped into an unmarked maintenance shaft, sealed her environmental suit, and began counting down. The Nebulans had never understood humanity's capacity for patience, for calculated revenge. They saw only the emotional response, the rage, the grief, the desire for justice, but missed the cold calculation beneath. In the chamber above, Ixal was still arguing for military action when the station's lights flickered. The quantum displays went dark. Emergency systems activated, then failed. One by one, the station's critical systems began shutting down. Impossible, Ixal whispered, her gaseous form barely visible in the growing darkness. Our systems are perfect. They're engineered to. Perfect isn't enough. Quinn's voice came through their emergency communicators. Ambassador Morrison tried to warn you. She spent years studying your weaknesses, preparing contingencies. You killed her for it. Now you get to experience what happens when humans decide to stop playing by your rules. The station shuddered. Through the crystalline walls, they watched in horror as massive ships seemed to materialize from within the gas giant's atmospheric storms. Human vessels, their hulls rippling with chain-ionic adaptive camouflage. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Combined Fleet, a new voice announced across all frequencies. You took one of ours. Now we're going to show you exactly what humanity does when you mistake our restraint for weakness. In her escape pod, Quinn sent one final message to Earth Command. Phase 1 complete. The Ghost Fleet is revealed. Let the storm break. The war had begun, and the Nebula Kingdom was about to learn that their perfect systems had one critical flaw. They had never been tested against human ingenuity driven by righteous fury. The first Nebulan city ship to witness humanity's new warfare doctrine was Luminous Ascendant, pride of the Nebula Kingdom's northern territories. Its crystalline spires housed over 1 million nebulans, their gaseous forms swirling in carefully maintained atmospheric layers that stretched 20 kilometers into HD 478 bits' turbulent skies. Captain Maya Rodriguez watched it through the quantum viewport of the ECS Vengeance, her ship's adaptive camouflage rendering them invisible within the gas giant's perpetual storms. "Status on the atmosphere harvesters?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of what they were about to attempt. "All 6 units showing green, Captain," Lieutenant Park reported from his station. Morrison's calculations were perfect. Their shield harmonics can't detect the harvester frequencies. Rodriguez allowed herself a thin smile. Even in death, Catherine Morrison was still fighting for humanity. The ambassador's classified files had revealed the fundamental flaw in Nebulan city ship design. Their atmospheric containment systems were calibrated only for natural environmental threats. They never conceived that someone would weaponize the very mining equipment they'd dismissed as primitive. "Deploy harvesters. Begin extraction pattern Morrison 7. The massive devices detached from Vengeance's hull, their crystalline collection arrays matching the exact resonance frequency of Luminous Ascendant's outer atmospheric shell. To the Nebulan sensors, they would register as nothing more than normal atmospheric turbulence. Inside the city ship, the first warning came too late. In the Environmental Control Center, Supervisor Kex Vin noticed a subtle shift in the outer atmospheric layers. "Strange," he mused, his gaseous form rippling with curiosity. The pressure gradient's air. The entire chamber erupted in alarms. On every display, atmospheric integrity readings plummeted. The city ship's carefully maintained environmental layers were being systematically stripped away, like peeling an onion from the outside in. Impossible. Kex Vin's form, compressed with horror, raise the emergency barriers, activate storm shields. But the emergency barriers failed to deploy. Unknown to the Nebulans, Ghost Fleet infiltrators had spent months sabotaging their backup systems, ensuring that when the attack came, there would be nowhere to hide. On the Vengeance's bridge, Rodriguez watched the harvester telemetry with cold satisfaction. Outer atmosphere at 30% and falling. Inner layers showing signs of degradation. Through the viewport, Luminous Ascendant's magnificent spires began to dim as their power systems failed. The Nebulan equivalent of panic began to spread through the city ship's population as their carefully regulated atmospheric conditions deteriorated. "Captain," Park called out, "we're detecting Nebulan military vessels emerging from the lower atmosphere." 5. No, 7 capital ships. Rodriguez didn't flinch. Right on schedule. Deploy sonic disruptors. The Nebulan ships, impressive crystalline structures designed to channel the power of stellar winds, moved to engage the threat they couldn't see. But Morrison's files had revealed another crucial weakness. Their sensor systems relied on the same atmospheric principles that allowed Nebulans to exist. As the human fleet's sonic disruptors activated, the very atmosphere around them became a weapon. Nebulan ships began to shatter, their crystalline hulls resonating at frequencies they were never designed to withstand. Those that survived found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to exist everywhere and nowhere as human ships appeared and vanished within the storms. "Luminous Ascendant's inner atmosphere critical," Park reported. "They're beginning emergency evacuations." Rodriguez opened a channel to the dying city ship. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Earth Combined Fleet. You have 15 minutes to complete evacuation before we destabilize your core atmospheric layer. This is the price of murdering our ambassador." As escape pods streamed from the city ship's emergency base, Rodriguez received a priority transmission from Fleet Command. "Luminous Ascendant confirmed as Supremacy Front Stronghold. Ghost operatives recovering evidence. Proceed with atmospheric strip. Leave them nothing." Rodriguez watched the city ship's lights fade, remembering Morrison's last warning about Nebulan hubris. They had built their civilization believing they were masters of their environment, never imagining that humans would turn that environment against them. "Prepare for final extraction sequence," she ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity's capacity for adaptation." The storm raged on, and within it, humanity's ghost fleet continued its inexorable advance through Nebulan space, leaving broken cities and shattered certainties in their wake. The quantum encrypted file that triggered across human networks bore Ambassador Morrison's personal signature. In secure briefing rooms across Earth's combined fleet, commanders watched as years of careful intelligence gathering unfurled before them. But in the private quarters of the ECS Normandy, Commander Sarah West felt her breath catch as a personal message from Morrison appeared. "Sarah, if you're seeing this, I'm dead, and the Supremacy Front finally showed their true colors. Remember what I taught you about their thermal regulation chambers? It's time. Activate the sleeper cells. Protocol designation: Storm's Eye." West's hands trembled as she initiated the encrypted broadcast. Across Nebulan space, hidden agents, humans who'd spent years embedding themselves in Nebulan society through Morrison's foresight, received their activation codes. In the heart of the Nebula Kingdom's military command, Lieutenant James Chen, disguised as a maintenance technician, accessed the primary thermal regulation chamber. His augmented reality display highlighted the critical nodes Morrison had identified years ago. The Nebulans had never questioned why their new technician showed such interest in their environmental systems. "Package delivered," he whispered into his subdermal communicator. "Time to show them why you never let your enemy study your infrastructure for a decade." Across 16 major Nebulan installations, similar messages flickered across the Ghost network. Morrison had placed her people carefully, each one armed with intimate knowledge of Nebulan weaknesses that only a diplomatic observer could have gathered. In the Nebulan High Command's war room, Supreme Commander Ixel was coordinating their response to the Ghost Fleet's attacks when the first systems began to fail. "What's happening to our thermal regulators?" she demanded, her gaseous form swirling with agitation. "Unknown, Commander," her chief engineer responded. "The systems are registering as functional, but environmental conditions are degrading across all levels." "Impossible," Ixel insisted. "Our systems air." "Perfect." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, broadcast across their internal channels. "Ambassador Morrison spent years listening to you talk about your perfect systems. She knew you'd never suspect someone was actually paying attention to your technological arrogance." West's voice carried through their command center as displays began shutting down one by one. "You killed the one human who truly wanted to understand your civilization. Now her understanding will be your undoing." In his hidden command post, Shen watched as the cascading failures thread through the Nebulan military network. Morrison had discovered that Nebulan military command and control relied on perfectly regulated environmental conditions, conditions that could be subtly altered to degrade their ability to coordinate their forces. "This is Ghost Actual," he reported. "Phase 1 of Morrison Protocol complete. Their military command structure is compromised. Moving to Phase 2. Across Nebulan space, hidden human operatives began emergent from deep cover. Years of gathered intelligence flowed into Earth's military networks. Defense codes, shield frequencies, atmospheric vulnerabilities. Everything Morrison had collected while playing the role of interested diplomat. On the Normandy's bridge, West received the incoming data streams with grim satisfaction. "Send word to the Ghost Fleet. Begin synchronized attacks on all marked targets. Authorization code: Morrison's Justice." In the Nebulan war room, Ixel watched helplessly as her perfect military machine began to tear itself apart from the inside. Reports flooded in of critical facilities failing, defense systems turning against their own ships, and atmospheric processors shutting down across their territories. "How?" she demanded of the empty air. "How did they do this?" The answer came in Morrison's voice, a final recording broadcast across all Nebulan frequencies. "You considered us primitive because we still feel emotions, still act on instinct. You never understood that this makes us patient, methodical, willing to spend years planning the perfect response. You killed me because I learned too much about your weaknesses. Now you'll learn about humanity's greatest strength, our ability to play the long game. As Nebulan military installations went dark one by one, West sent a final message to Earth Command. The Morrison Protocol is fully activated. The Ghost Fleet has their targeting data. The storm breaks now. The Nebula Kingdom was about to learn that their perfect society had been compromised long before they murdered humanity's ambassador. Morrison's legacy would be written in the collapse of the civilization that underestimated her species one too many times. The crystalline corridors of the Supremacy Front's supposedly secret weapons facility echoed with alarm klaxons. Dr. Marcus Reed, posing as a Nebulan-trained environmental scientist, kept his movements measured and calm as he made his way to the central research chamber. 5 years of deep cover work had led to this moment. "Doctor, thank the storms you're here." Chief Researcher Nexval's gaseous form twisted in agitation within his containment vessel. "The prototype weapons containment field is destabilizing. We can't shut it down." Reed studied the readings with practiced precision, his augmented reality implant transmitting everything to the Ghost Fleet Command. "Interesting," he mused, fingers dancing across the control interface. "Have you tried reversing the polarity of the magnetic containment? That would cause a catastrophic." Nexval's form condensed in horror as understanding dawned. "You're one of them." Reed's smile was cold. "Ambassador Morrison says hello." The explosion that rocked the facility was precisely calculated, destroying the prototype while leaving the research data intact. As chaos erupted around him, Reed activated his quantum transmitter. "Ghost 7 to command. Package secured. Moving to Phase 2. Across Nebulan space, similar scenarios played out as Morrison's sleeper agents emerged from deep cover. The Nebulans had never understood how thoroughly humanity had infiltrated their society, using their own prejudices against them. In the Supremacy Front's high-security command center, Security Director Vex Mal received increasingly desperate reports. 3 more research facilities have gone dark, his assistant reported, atmospheric patterns churning with distress. "And we've lost contact with the entire defense grid in Sector 7. Impossible." Vex Mal's form rippled with rage. "How are they accessing our most secure?" "You gave us the access," a calm voice interrupted. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, who had served as Vex Mal's trusted aide for 3 years, stood in the doorway. Her holographic disguise flickered and failed, revealing her human features. "You were so convinced of your technological superiority that you never questioned why some of your new workers were so interested in learning your systems." Vex Mal's containment vessel hummed with building energy. "Our security protocols were written by beings who never had to think like survivors." Chen cut him off, her hand already moving to the environmental controls. "Ambassador Morrison taught us your weakness. You plan for every logical possibility, but never for the impossible." The chamber's atmospheric pressure began to fluctuate wildly. Chen watched dispassionately as the Nebulan leaders struggled to maintain their gaseous forms. "For 3 years, I brought you your reports, scheduled your meetings, and learned every detail of your operation. Did you ever once question why a lesser species would accept such a menial role?" Throughout the facility, similar scenes unfolded as more sleeper agents revealed themselves. The Supremacy Front's leadership watched in horror as their perfect security crumbled from within. On the bridge of the ECS Vengeance, Captain Rodriguez received Chen's signal. "Ghost teams confirmed in position. All priority targets marked. Commence Operation Thunderhead." The Ghost Fleet's ships materialized from within the gas giant storms, their weapons already locked on the coordinates provided by the infiltrators. The Supremacy Front's security ships found themselves fighting an enemy that knew their exact patrol routes, shield frequencies, and tactical protocols. In the chaos of the facility's collapse, Chen transmitted her final report to Ghost Command. "Ambassador Morrison's final protocol is complete. The Supremacy Front's leadership is neutralized. All research data on illegal weapons development has been secured. She paused, watching as Vexmal's containment vessel finally failed. They never understood what Morrison taught us. True infiltration isn't about technology or perfect disguises. It's about patience, about being willing to spend years being overlooked and underestimated, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the facility's remaining systems crashed around her, Chen allowed herself a grim smile. The Nebulans were about to learn humanity's most terrifying capability, the ability to turn an enemy's strength into their greatest weakness. The storm was no longer coming. It was already inside their walls, and it wore their faces. Admiral Victor Hayes stood on the bridge of the ECS Hyperion, watching as the massive Stormbreaker platform moved into position above the Nebula Kingdom's capital gas giant. The device, larger than most space stations, represented humanity's masterpiece of reverse engineering, born from Morrison's meticulous study of nebulan atmospheric manipulation technology. Platform achieving synchronization with the gas giant's storm layers, reported Commander Emma Santos, her fingers dancing across the quantum interface. Morrison's calculations were right. Their entire civilization depends on riding these storms. And now we control them. Below them, the sprawling Nebulan capital city ship Eternal Ascendant floated in its carefully maintained atmospheric pocket. Its crystalline spires housed the High Council, and more importantly, the remnants of the Supremacy Front's leadership. "Begin the sequence," Hayes ordered. "Show them what happens when you give humans a decade to study your technology." The Stormbreaker's massive arrays hummed to life, their crystalline matrices, built from captured Nebulan tech, beginning to resonate with the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere. Slowly, methodically, they began to alter the very storms the Nebulans had thought they'd mastered. Inside Eternal Ascendant's Environmental Control Center, alarms blared as operators watched their readings in horror. Impossible. Chief Controller Zexfin's gaseous form churned with panic. The storm patterns are shifting against all natural laws. Natural laws. The voice came from their own communication system. You should have paid more attention when Ambassador Morrison asked all those naive questions about your storm riding technology. She wasn't admiring it. She was learning how to break it. The city ship shuddered as its atmospheric envelope began to destabilize. The Nebulans had built their entire civilization around their ability to predict and ride the gas giant's eternal storms. They'd never imagined someone could turn those storms against them. On the Hyperion's bridge, Santos monitored the cascading effects. Their power grid is failing. They're losing atmospheric control on multiple levels. Their military vessels can't maintain formation in the disrupted storm patterns. Hayes nodded grimly. Patch me through to their command frequency. In the Eternal Ascendant's High Council chamber, Hayes's voice echoed with terrible clarity. This is Admiral Hayes of the Earth Combined Fleet. Your storms are now under our control. Your cities exist only because we allow it. Surrender the Supremacy Front leadership, or we will show you exactly how well we've learned to manipulate your environment. Supreme Commander Ixel, her containment vessel humming with barely controlled fury, watched as another section of the city's power grid failed. You're bluffing. No species could master storm control this quickly. Our technology took millennia to. The Stormbreaker platform pulsed once, and a controlled atmospheric shockwave rippled through the capital's defensive perimeter. 3 military vessels, caught in the disrupted storm patterns, shattered instantly. That was 1% of the platform's capacity, Hayes informed them coldly. Ambassador Morrison spent years studying every aspect of your civilization. Every question she asked, every observation she made, was building to this moment. You killed her for learning too much. Now learn from us. As if to emphasize his point, the Stormbreaker's arrays shifted again, creating a visible pattern in the gas giant's atmosphere. A massive human handprint, pressed into the storms the Nebulans had thought they alone could master. In a secure command center deep within the city ship, the few remaining Supremacy Front leaders watched their perfect society crumble. "We must launch the forbidden weapons," one insisted. "Better to destroy everything than submit to these primitives." "Those weapons won't launch," a calm voice informed them. Security Chief Quinn stepped from the shadows, her stealth suit deactivating. "Morrison made sure of that before you killed her. Check your launch codes." The Nebulan leaders frantically accessed their secure systems, only to find every code changed, every backup corrupted. Their last resort had been neutralized before they even knew they needed it. Quinn's smile was razor-sharp as she transmitted the final confirmation to the fleet. "Stormbreaker control confirmed. The capital is contained. Checkmate." Above them, the Stormbreaker platform continued its work, methodically demonstrating that humanity had learned to master the Nebulan's domain better than they ever had. The Storm Riders were about to become the Storm's victims. The quantum displays aboard the ECS Hyperion showed the ultimate weapon of the Nebula Kingdom, the Stellar Manipulator, a massive installation hidden within the corona of HD 478's second sun. Built in secret by the Supremacy Front, it represented their insurance policy against any species that dared challenge their dominion. Admiral Hayes studied the facility's schematics, courtesy of Morrison's final intelligence cache. Status of the infiltration team. Ghost Team Alpha has breached the outer thermal barriers, Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice steady despite the tremendous stakes. Dr. Reed is leading them to the control core. Time to activation, 15 minutes. In the Stellar Manipulator's command center, the remaining Supremacy Front leaders gathered for their final gambit. High Commander Rixval's gaseous form churned with dark purpose as he approached the activation terminal. "The codes, quickly," he demanded. "We'll show these primitives what true power means." But when he entered his authorization sequence, the terminal responded with an unexpected message. Identity confirmed. Catherine Morrison, Earth Diplomatic Corps. Final protocol activated. The chamber erupted in chaos as screens flickered to life, displaying Morrison's face. "If you're seeing this," her recorded message began, "then you've tried to use the Stellar Manipulator. Did you really think I spent all those diplomatic visits studying your peaceful solar research out of scientific curiosity?" Reed's team burst into the command center, their adaptive armor shifting to match the facility's crystalline walls. "The ambassador sends her regards," Reed announced, his weapon trained on the Nebulan leaders. And a lesson about underestimating human thoroughness. On the Hyperion's bridge, Chen's console lit up with new data. "Admiral, Ghost Team confirms. Morrison didn't just compromise their launch codes. She completely rewrote the Stellar Manipulator's targeting protocols. If they'd activated it," Hayes allowed himself a grim smile, "it would have targeted their own military installations instead of our fleet." She turned their doomsday weapon into a suicide switch. Through the quantum feeds, they watched as Reed's team secured the facility. The Supremacy Front leaders, their perfect plan unraveling, found themselves trapped by the very weapon they'd created in secret. "This is Ghost Actual," Reed's voice crackled through the command channel. "Stellar Manipulator is under our control." Morrison's final protocol was a complete success, ready to proceed with demonstration. Hayes opened a channel to the Nebulan High Council. "Your secret weapon is now ours." Ambassador Morrison spent her final years ensuring that every piece of technology you developed in secret would become a weapon against you. "Surrender now, or watch as we use your own creation to dismantle your military infrastructure." In the High Council chamber, Supreme Commander Ixel watched in horror as the Stellar Manipulator's massive arrays began to pivot, targeting the Nebula Kingdom's chief military installations. "How?" she demanded. "How did one human ambassador manage this level of infiltration?" The answer came from Quinn, who had quietly appeared in the council chamber. "Because you never saw her as a threat. You were so convinced of your superiority that you gave her access to everything. She wasn't just gathering intelligence, she was rewriting your future." To demonstrate their control, Reed's team activated the manipulator at minimal power. Precise beams of stellar energy lanced out, carefully destroying the Supremacy Front's hidden weapons caches one by one. "A message from Earth," Quinn announced to the stunned council. "Morrison's final protocol includes detailed files on every illegal weapon you've developed, every secret installation you've built. Surrender the Supremacy Front leadership for trial, or watch as we use your own ultimate weapon to dismantle your military superiority piece by piece." On the Hyperion's bridge, Hayes received the High Council's response: unconditional surrender. The Supremacy Front's leadership would face justice for Morrison's murder. "Send word to Earth," Hayes ordered. "The Morrison Protocol is complete. The storm has broken them." In the silent depths of space, the stellar manipulator stood as a testament to humanity's most potent weapon: the ability to turn an enemy's greatest strength into the instrument of their defeat. Catherine Morrison's legacy would be written not just in the stars, but in the fundamental reshaping of Nebulan society. The judgment storm had passed, and in its wake, a new order would rise. The signing ceremony took place in the transformed central chamber of Eternal Ascendant, now modified to accommodate both gaseous and solid forms. Admiral Hayes stood before the assembled representatives of both species, the Morrison Accords displayed on quantum screens in both human and Nebulan script. "We gather here not to celebrate victory," Hayes began, his voice carrying across the chamber, "but to ensure such a conflict never happens again." Ambassador Morrison's final wish wasn't for vengeance, it was for understanding. Behind him, the remnants of the Supremacy Front's leadership waited in specially designed containment vessels, about to face trial for Morrison's assassination. But they weren't the only ones transformed by the war. The Nebulan High Council had undergone its own revolution, with younger, more progressive members taking control. Senior Council member Lixven, her gaseous form showing the subtle patterns of humility, addressed the gathering. "We thought ourselves perfect, and in our perfection, we became blind. Ambassador Morrison saw not just our weaknesses, but our potential. The Morrison Accords will ensure that potential is realized through cooperation, not competition." The Accords themselves represented a fundamental reshaping of both societies. Humans would share their adaptability and innovation, while Nebulans would contribute their environmental mastery and technological insights. The Stormbreaker platforms would be converted for joint scientific research, studying the gas giants both species now called home. Dr. Reed, now leading the Joint Technological Integration Committee, activated a holographic display showing the first collaborative project, a new type of city ship designed by both species. "This is Morrison's true legacy," he explained. "Not the weapons we created from her research, but the foundations for a shared future." The design incorporated human adaptability, with Nebulan environmental control, creating habitats that could support both species comfortably. More importantly, it represented a fundamental shift in Nebulan thinking, an acknowledgement that perfection comes not from isolation, but from synthesis. Security Chief Quinn, watching from her position near the human delegation, allowed herself a small smile as she received the final data packet from the Ghost teams still embedded throughout Nebulan space. Every secret installation had been cataloged, every hidden weapon secured. The Supremacy Front's ideology of superiority had been completely dismantled. "The final provision of the Accords," Hayes continued, "establishes the Morrison Institute for Interspecies Cooperation. Its first task will be training diplomats from both our peoples in the art of genuine understanding, not just technological exchange, but cultural comprehension." Lixven's form shifted to display the formal patterns of ceremonial commitment. "We learned at great cost that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to change. Humanity taught us that emotion is not a weakness, but a source of innovation we had forgotten to cultivate." The quantum screens displayed the final signature protocols. As representatives from both species came forward to formalize the Accords, the gas giant storms outside the city ship formed an unprecedented pattern, a double helix of human and Nebulan atmospheric manipulation techniques working in harmony. "Ambassador Morrison's last message," Quinn announced, activating a hidden quantum node, was not her warning about the Supremacy Front. It was this: Morrison's image appeared above the gathering, recorded days before her death. To those who witnessed this moment, remember that true diplomacy is not about maintaining perfect systems, but about having the courage to change them. Humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our determination, but our capacity to transform enemies into allies. Let this be my legacy. As the ceremony concluded, Hayes received word that the first joint human-Nebulan research team had successfully stabilized a new type of atmospheric envelope, one that could support both species simultaneously. The impossible had become routine, the unthinkable transformed into the foundation of a new era. The storms still raged outside Eternal Ascendant, but now they were studied, understood, and mastered by both species together. In the end, Catherine Morrison's greatest victory wasn't in defeating the Nebula Kingdom. It was in showing them a better way to be perfect. The storm had broken, and in its wake, two civilizations had learned to dance among the thunders they once fought to control.